Hi guys, it's me, Reb. Most of you know who I am or have been shown this because of shared interests by other friends that we have mutually. Obviously, with the lockdown, I've been relatively quiet most of the day. I want to try and avoid spending my entire day playing computer games, stuff like that. And obviously, with the whole situation, a lot of LARPs that people take part in, a lot of bigger roleplay events have been shut down. Now, obviously, I'm trying to do what I can with things like that, so I've started up a channel on a different, under a different name for kids' story stuff, but it's not quite roleplay. I had this idea based on post-apocalypse, or the apLOCKalypse, as I'm referring to it for the purposes of this game. It's somewhat between a LARP game that you're going to be playing over voice chats and a Megagame. At the moment, my plans are not to have very many mechanics, but a chiefly narrative sort of playthrough for people who've played games like this. You're more looking at the best way to describe it, I guess, would be to be a sort of like a turn-based story. So, for example, I will do an announcement as an NPC news reporter, which you guys should keep an eye out soon for, as I've got plans to get that started up. Give you some ideas of what the setting is, give the city that you guys are going to be playing in a kind of start, just to maybe give you guys a bit of inspiration. But the fundamental thing will be every turn will be done over a couple of days. People will have access to a Discord, which they can input a turn in. The turns are chiefly quite narrative, with the use of surpluses and just surpluses. Risking the things that you have in order to change the world to keep people safe. Whether people choose to use this as an opportunity to push themselves forwards or work together to make a bigger project is basically up to the players. So to give things a bit more of the few mechanics that I actually have, the big ones of these being surpluses and needs. Narratively speaking, a surplus is something that you have a lot of. So, for example, going off of media that people probably are aware of, the Vault Dwellers in the Fallout series. So they might be described as having a surplus of safety. They've got these places that are very well protected. People don't really know about them. They're very rarely a threat until people actually do know about them. It's different from a normal settlement, which doesn't have a surplus or a need. They've got a moderate amount of safety. Maybe they've got chain link fences. They've got guys on patrol. Maybe they're just in a quite good position. And then again, it varies a lot from someone with a need, for example, for safety. A settlement that recently been raided and their militaristic types have all been killed, or guys who just have no idea of how to survive in a wasteland environment. So fundamentally, character creation is building a faction for which you'll be representing a leader or a person of importance who's going to be communicating with other settlements. Now, the way this is going to be done is you've got two options, fundamentally. I have a list of prefixes and suffixes which you can use to describe your towns, or not towns, but factions within the city. So, for example, you might be a vault-dwelling weirdo. So, vault dwellers, very much like you'd expect from the Fallout kind of story. They live underground. They're very well protected, pretty much in a bunker. It doesn't have to literally be in a kind of vault bunker. It's just more the theme than anything else. And again, weirdos, they're kind of like the guys that have got something a bit strange about them, and that's represented by their surpluses more than anything else. You guys can make that work however you want. So, to give you an example, if you were a vault-dwelling weirdo, you'd start with the resources, the surpluses of rare materials from being a weirdo. This can represent things like fissionable materials or maybe even body parts from mutated monsters. You'd start with defenses as one of your surpluses from being a vault dweller. Obviously, the vaults of any sort of description are quite well defended, very well protected. They're hard to destroy, mostly because of either accessibility or just pure solidness. And the final surplus they get is safety. Again, as was discussed, they're usually very out of the way, very hard to find them. People don't really know about them. Now, the opposite side of this is that for each of the choices that you make, you get a need, which is a good opportunity for you to get in contact with other factions, find out what they're about, discuss where your weaknesses are, see if you can cover anything from each other. So, for example, the big problem with vault dwellers is a lack of food. So they have a need for crops. They don't really have much that they can do in the way of growing because, again, they're very out of the way. They don't often have a lot of sunlight, things like that. And weirdos have the need of barter goods because, they don't really have a whole lot. They've got this really rare material. It's not necessarily useful everywhere. Not everyone wants it. If you've got a barrel of radioactive waste, who's gonna want that except for someone who's got an absolute use and want to build some, little boy nukes for their Fat Man launchers. And that's fundamentally the other way you could do it is you can ask on the Discord for a random setup. I've got some tokens in a bag digitally because I'll mostly be doing all my map keeping on Tabletop Simulator for my own sanity and space in the house, to be honest with you. I've got a random setup. You'll get 3 surpluses, you'll get 2 needs. You can take a look, see what you think you could build around that. The random setup is pretty much for people who have a strong idea of what they want to play or a concept, but don't necessarily have a strong opinion on. They don't need the help necessarily for what sort of starting resources and stuff like that. The way that the turn setups will be done is, like I said, I'll be doing a video, which will be a sort of like an online news update of what's going on. I might tell you that, after the efforts of the Vault Dwellers, the music that's been plaguing the city and keeping everyone awake with psychic terror have been shut down. In other news, super mutants have been sighted to the western side of the city, so people living on the west side should probably keep an eye out. Just, things like that. Often it'll be lots of little info pieces that will put people in awkward situations, force them to work together. And as part of your turn, what you'll do is you'll give about a paragraph of description of what you are going to do as part of your turn. Now, for me, that doesn't actually require people to get in contact with me in character over a video call. We are, like I said, we're going to have a Discord set up that will allow people to just sort of get in there, make a post. That way we've got a nice log of them. If I have any questions, I can just give a bit of a prod. You will have a chance, if you've had a conversation with someone else, to say, I'm working with this person on this project. This is the deal we made. Just more to give me an idea for the narrative side of things more than anything. One of the other things that players will be able to work towards is something called wonder. Wonder isn't necessarily sort of Age of Empires or Civilization wonders where it's the Hanging Gardens of Babylon or something like that. It represents things like mobilizing for a sort of state of all-out warfare or building a trustworthy series of trade networks that travel around, or maybe it could even be something like setting up a new religion, or just, sort of bits and pieces like that will sort of push the story talk forwards. People will get a story, like a narrative benefit out of it. Some of them, it will be things like the people who build it decide whether it's just for them and their friends or whether it's something that's going to be available for everyone. Some of them may have slight downsides if you've not been involved in part of it, or if you're an enemy of the people who have built them. But fundamentally, the idea is going to be, here's a reason to do a bit of roleplay of an evening, 5-10 minute conversation with someone else, maybe a bit of a chance to put on some of your silly costumes. I'm sure people have got tons of bits and pieces sitting around that they can use for costume. I mean, just within arm's reach, I could You know, got a nice simple pair of goggles. Doesn't have to be anything even more clever than that. Or, you know, mostly I have these to hand because I've set up my house to look like a bunker from the outside. You know, so I've got handy little post-apocalyptic gas mask, just in case I wanted to make myself look like an absolute psycho for people walking past out of the window in front of me. Or, you know, you might be a person who collects silly hats, much like me and my wife are. So you might decide that your faction are raiders, and you've got yourself a nice little raider's helmet for your conversation, so you can try and browbeat people into doing as you say. You know, it could even be as simple as just finding some clothes that are relevant to the character that you wear. You know, it could just be normal. This is post-apocalyptic, and it's not sort of like supernatural necessarily. If people choose to want to be something like, I don't know, maybe they want to be a mutant, and they decide that they want to put on the makeup and be the mutant, that's absolutely fine. Mechanically, there's literally no difference. It's all narrative. It's not, the mechanics of it aren't important. So if people choose to be mutants, go for it. I recommend, but it's not necessary for anyone to dress up. But yeah, that's fundamentally it. Just check out down below for the link to the Discord. If you've got any questions, feel free to pop it in the Discord. I'm going to be not having comments available on this video, mostly because I fear the public and their opinions. But yeah, hopefully I'll see you guys on the other side of the apocalypse.